Every time I see the
Hello,
countdown
hello.
on the screen,
Welcome,
I'm always
welcome.
like, the final countdown.
Yes,
Me
yes,
too.
yes. Welcome to Healing Help, and we are excited to be here. Another episode of dealing with the family ties, and so it's good. I'm just Antoine with a Drulix, and as always, just love to bring value wherever I show up and share the information that I've been helped with, and to assist some other people in moving to a healthier place of living.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
I do too. And I just want to say good evening. And you all, we just love that our family tunes in, checks us out. This is another episode of the Healing Help Desk. I'm Jay, your Healchemist, and as always, I am honored to hold this space with you tonight. Before we go into tonight, what we talking about? I'm gonna pass the mic and let Joe say his intros
Yep.
and tell you who
Hey
he be.
everyone. Yep, I'm Joe. I'm Joe the Road, aka just Joe. I'm the researcher with Heal and Help, and we got a great topic for y'all.
Man, listen. So tonight we are absolutely continuing our family ties series with a conversation that is sparked by one of our viewers. And can I just take this moment right quick to just say
Yes.
I just want to acknowledge and appreciate everyone who reaches out and shares their stories and trust this space to unpack complexities or the complexities of healing. Your voices absolutely matter, and tonight's discussion is fueled by one of those voices. So I am eternally grateful anytime, someone goes, "Hey, can you talk about this?" And I've we have some more coming up of people who are just telling their stories and saying, "Hey, can you kind of put a voice to my story?" Sometimes, especially when we're dealing with family ties, it's really hard to tell our story and tell our truth because sometimes we're telling somebody else's story also, almost all the time,
Hmm.
right? We telling somebody else's story. So um I just, appreciate anytime somebody trusts us with their story and allows us to put a voice to their story, having us not having actually lived it ourselves. So um
Yes, yes, yes.
I can kind of give you guys want me to go ahead and give like a little brief synopsis of what the question was?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
It's very detailed. I love the question. I love You can tell there was some thought behind it, right?
Yeah.
And some
Yes.
Hmm.
feelings behind it. And so that um that drive, I love to honor that, right? Honor that drive,
Absolutely.
that to
Yeah.
and that
Yes.
honesty and that upfrontness, and give them some clarity on what they're asking.
And the vulnerability, right?
Oh yeah.
Even though and we did, just for clarification, we would not arbitrarily take somebody's story just because you sent it to us and go, "Oh, we're going to have an episode on." We don't do that. We absolutely get the permission of those who send us their stories and ask us to cover topics, especially if it is specific in their story over there. If you send your story in confidence, it will be in confidence. It's not something discussed on the podcast because the goal is not to boost the podcast. The goal is to boost the healing in the community. And we did actually respond to her with some
Mhm.
steps that she could take with regard to a question. And I asked her, would you mind if we used it? And she said, actually, when she sent it, she said, podcast idea, if you would. So she kind of already had the idea that she wanted it to be featured on the podcast. So I just want to make that clear that we would
Oh,
never
nice.
betray your trust ever, even unspoken trust, right?
Right.
The minute you send us something and trust us with, unless specifically expressed, we will not discuss it outside of the correspondence between us and you. Cool.
Cool beans.
So
Yep. That
to
sounds
sum
good right
up
there.
her, and I apologize if there's a little lag. I know we're having some technical difficulties earlier, but to sum up her question, her question really was, what ethical or moral obligation, if any, does a child have, and how do we even define parent as a society? What standards do we set for parental responsibility that was the gist of what she was saying. And have certain expectations about parental duty, right? But do we hold people accountable for failing to meet them, right? Like, I have seen videos online where it looks like adult children are filming their parents. There was one in particular that just kind of crawled up the back of my neck. There was a girl. Apparently, she was leaving for college, and she was filming her mom, and her mom was ranting and raving. I mean, she was going ham. And immediately, everybody in the comments attacked the person, the child. Oh, that's your mama. You need to have respect for your mom. She didn't say anything. She was just recording her mother. You shouldn't embarrass your mother like that. You shouldn't record your mother like that. You know, that's so disrespectful. And I was like, what about the feeling that you need to record your parent? Did anybody stop and go, I wonder why she felt the need to record her parent? Because a lot of times, you know, if you're recording a parent, I would just say, I don't think the intention, and I can't speak for every scenario, but I don't think the intention was to embarrass. I think the intention was to protect and or expose. And I just feel like sometimes we behave as though, because we have this title parent, that our accountability goes out the window with regard to the adult child or the children.
Well, you know, a
So,
stigmatism in where I grew up, you know, it was said all the time that um, do as I say and not as I do, right? And from a parent standpoint
yeah,
and a parental standpoint, and we know that doesn't work, right?
That's
We're
correct.
gonna, as a child, we're gonna do what we see, and then we may do what we hear, but and that's just a human behavior, right? Um, so I believe that it's really a learning curve, and a lot of stuff that we haven't dealt with, and setting the right roles and teaching people how to properly handle social and emotional intelligence, right? I think that's just
mm,
Right.
it's not been taught. And so when we hold somebody accountable for something, there has to be a standard set. And I believe that as a society, we haven't really set a standard. Well, there is a standard set, but it's so unrecognized, right? The line is so blurred that we really don't know what it is. And it hasn't been set high enough that it even matters in a sense, if I would say. And so I think that really needs to be something that needs to be set and saying, okay, this is a role of a parent, and this is some of the things that, because when you have a kid, to me, it's like that child is a check on who am I and what am I doing as a parent. And a lot of times we're not ready for that if we haven't dealt with that all our lives, right? To understand who we are and how I'm behaving and how my behavior affects what my atmosphere and what's going on in my life. So I have this saying that thoughts produce feelings, feelings produce actions, and actions produce results. And so if I don't monitor, if I want to change my results, I have to monitor my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. Right. And if I don't
Mm,
do that, if I'm oblivious to that, I can't change my results. And so now I start have to unpack, how am I thinking and why am I thinking that? And why did I start thinking that because of this situation or that situation? And then, why did it evoke some type of feelings that I had to behave in such a way? And then I got some results from my behavior. So it's a
mm.
process. It's not easy, but I think if we start with children and start teaching them how things transpire, then we can kind of mold people into that. Because I can't have an expectation for you, but you haven't been taught. I
Yeah.
can have one, but it's just not logical to have an expectation if I haven't set a standard that you can say, okay, that's how it should be done. And
Mm.
now, how do I get there? What are some ways that I can get there? And so as a society, I think we
Right.
failed that. And I want to go even as far as to say, I think it was intentional.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah, because
That's deep.
I was hearing what Jay was saying, you Anton, because that is really deep. Because there is no, I mean, to my knowledge, yeah, we got how to parent books and out there and stuff like that, right? But there's no standard or anything. And also, I agree with you said, Antoine, that when you still got to unpack stuff yourself as the parent to understand, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, what parenting really is. I mean, you bring in a child into this world too, and then you still have things you need to unpack from your own childhood that you experienced from your own parents. Doesn't that, it's kind of like carries over, but you don't want to carry over all that. That's what I'm thinking too. But as a standard, yeah, that's a good question for me to really think on because I don't believe there is not one.
And I don't
Like something that model. Oh, go ahead. I'm done.
and I don't know if it's me, but the audio is still kind of like and it's speeding up. It's not really like even when Antoine was talking, it was kind of like going in and out. So I don't know if it's me or if it's uh the restream. I don't really know what is causing the issue, but
No, it's not just
um
you. I try to
so with
pause sometimes.
regard to her question, right? Because we have we've talked about, some of the things that we need to do to prepare our children to um, instill certain things in them, how we need to check ourselves. But what about, let's take her story, right? Let's take her situation. And the biggest part of what spawned her question is that she reunited with her dad, and there seems to be this expectation from him of her. So, okay, we've reconnected. Now, I left you, I abandoned you, but I now have a problem with the fact that you don't call me every week or every day or every other day, right? It's almost as if his expectation is I'm your father and there should be some reverence for me despite the fact that I left you and despite the fact that we really don't have this connection that would warrant the type of communication and connection that I'm seeking from you. And I'm also placing that responsibility on you, the adult child. And she was unsure about how to navigate that because, number one, it's like the reason our relationship is broken is because you abandoned me. Number two, you never took responsibility for doing so. Number three, we are in communication, but I don't feel like it's my responsibility to rebuild the relationship. I really feel like you owe me that. You owe me the effort that you did not put in throughout my lifetime. And I don't feel like if I'm not calling you every week or every day, you should take that personal. You should understand that that is the makeup of our relationship as per the connection that we absolutely do not have. And there was also a part in her story where um, her siblings were going to visit the dad often, or more often than she, and she would never go. She would always stay home. And the one time that she said, okay, I want to go, because they always come back and they've got these stories about what they did, he was not only mean to her, but I would say borderline cruel. And she said, okay, I'm never going again. So you left, you abandoned me based on my story, based on my truth, right? Because we don't know the story with mom and dad. We're talking about the adult child, what that child's experience was and still is, apparently. And now we are connected, and you, the expectation from you seems to be that you want me to behave like the daughter that was always close to daddy. And I don't even know you like that. Like, we not like that, bro. And so her thing is I don't want to sever the relationship with him. How how do I navigate that? you know what do I do when, because even saying to him, dad, you got some you got some emotional intelligence that you need to brush up on, and bring up to speed, and you got some you work to do. He's not that guy, and that's just not going to happen. That's not realistic. And so her thing is how do I navigate this situation with somebody who is quote unquote set in their ways and is not going to change, but has this expectation of me. And even in the expectation, there was a conversation that was had between the dad and the wife that was basically, he didn't expect it to be heard, but it was like, well, I'm not calling her anymore because she doesn't really call me. So not only are you not cultivating the relationship that you broke down, not only are you not pursuing a relationship with me, you expect me to pursue it with you. And if I don't, you're going to sever it again.
Yeah, that's huge, right? That's a lot. One of the things that I would say is um, frame. She needs to frame out what she wants out of the relationship, right?
Yeah.
What do I want from my dad? And if it's an apology, that's great, or whatever it is, she needs to find that out, right? And then see if
Mhm.
he's the guy that can give me that, right? And if
Right.
he can't, what is my response to that? Or
Yes.
how should I
Right.
handle that, right? And so you may have to really unpack that and need some help to unpack things like that, because I know I do. When I had a issue with my father, I had to ask myself, and I was talking to a friend and saying, okay, what do I want out of that relationship? What was I expecting out of that conversation? And um, it took a little digging to really find out what it is that I wanted. And was he able to give it, or should I want that or expect him to give me that? It's a huge question as well. Like, does he have the capacity to, or should I ask even any human being to give me that? Right. So if I'm wanting somebody, for example, to give me happiness or make me happy, that's not anyone's responsibility. That comes from within. Right. I have to
Right.
be happy with myself first. Now, can somebody add to my happiness and, making my experience more enjoyable? Of course, but that has to be initiated by me. I have to be good with who I am. And so starting to unpack those real questions, and know where your heart lies and what your expectation is, and then then being able to set boundaries, right, around the relationship based on your findings. And when I say boundaries, I'm talking about, what my expectations are, and if that person doesn't give me or meet my expectations, what I'm going to do about it.
Okay, yeah, that was very well said because after Jay was repeating, I said, yeah, because it sounds like he's the father is doing the abandonment thing again. Like, hey, if you don't call me, it's like, well, I'm not gonna call
Exactly.
you. So just re-traumatizing her again. And that's not what needed
That
to happen. And
whole
Anton, you make
entire
a
part.
great point. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Anton, you make a great point
And
in saying what is it that they want to get out of it, the relationship with their father. Like, are you looking for the
yeah,
apology, or you just looking for maybe the acknowledgement, like this is my experience of you that has happened, this is how it made me feel, and I just wanted you to acknowledge this, or not even have to acknowledge this, hear me out so I can get this out, because this is something I've been wanting to tell you, and then be prepared on the answer for it, because it might not always be, well, oh man, I made you feel like that. It could be something totally different if that a parent is not doesn't have that emotional
yeah,
intelligence.
yeah. It could be a situation where, and just his actions in general, right, coming from somebody who was abandoned and deals with abandonment issues. One of the biggest things that I was kind of afraid of with having the conversation with my dad when we reconnected was him re-abandoning, whether it be actual physical abandonment or emotionally not taking accountability, or not even being willing to acknowledge that I experienced because of something he did or didn't do, right? And fortunate for me, that wasn't the case, but I had decided in my head that if I felt any bit of abandonment from him, whether it be perceived that he was going to eventually disappear again, like we talk and then poof, he's gone, or I'm sharing my experience and he is dismissive or um, passing the buck. And like the first thing I said, I was like, if he says one thing about, well, I wasn't there because your mother, he's not even going to be able to finish that sentence. I don't want to hear what happened between you and her. I want to know why you didn't call, why you didn't send a call. You know what? You ain't got to deal with her to put something in the mail. You understand? So I felt like if he was not willing to take accountability, then I did not want to have a relationship with who he. So part of understanding what you want, well, understanding what you want and understanding what you might get and understanding that they may not be the same thing is something that I feel like she needs to deal with. But I also feel like having a conversation with him transparently, hey, I am thankful that we have a relationship and I definitely want to have a relationship, but I'm not even the person, and she expressed this, she's just not the person that does phone calls, and she's pretty much introverted. She calls in periods, to check and converse, but that is just not her personality in general, which was another layer to that, right? Because you don't even know me. Because if you knew me, you would know, and you would know that I'm an introvert, and calling and is not something that I do with anybody, not even my children, like that, like in the way that it feels like you want me to do, but what I was expressing to her when I spoke to her last was, you do need to decide what you want out of that relationship, but you also have to be prepared, like Joe said, that you may not get that, and you need to have an action plan for yourself and your emotional and mental well-being if it does go in the way that you we're hoping that it would not. In other words, he goes, well, you know what, and you don't care about me. You get into a, he starts ranting and, well, you want a relationship with me, then you're gonna have to call, and I don't care about you. If he does that kind of thing, the plan in place for you to be able to heal. And unfortunately, it is part of rehealing from some things that you may have come to grips with throughout your lifetime, because she's um, having support and having a support system in place, whether it be therapy, whether it be healing help group sessions, whether it be healing help private sessions, whether it be, talks with your mom or your that can kind of relate to your experience. But just having that plan, I basically told her, you need a wellness plan with how to navigate. But the first part of that, after you've established what you're going to do afterwards, is to be transparent with him. Let him know that it is not him, that this is the person that you are, but that you have some expectations of him, and you would like for him, explain out to him that him not calling you every day based on your personality is cool for you too. And that's estranged again, right?
Yeah.
Having an open discussion and being totally honest with him, I feel like is the best route.
Yes, you said something awesome, a lot of awesome things. But you started off with framing a safety, right? Safety for yourself,
Yeah.
safety for the other person, for the father in this case, is so key. It's like, okay, you know what? I love you, Dad. I honor you as my father. Um, and I want our relation. I want to build a relationship with you. So my goal talking to you today is to establish a relationship. But I want also to share with you who I am and how I operate, to give you a better understanding of who I am, so that you won't
Yeah.
have unreasonable expectations from me. And also, I want you to share with me who you are, because we haven't really had
Right.
um, a good relationship hitherto, right? And we really don't
Yeah.
know each other, only from hearsay and things of that nature, and the little
Yep.
exposure that we had throughout my life. And so, if we come to a common ground and we can rightfully move forward, which is my hopes, then I'm all for it. But you have to understand who I am and how that will look in regards to what you can expect from me. And then I would love to hear what
Right.
I can expect
Absolutely.
from you as well. So
Right.
now, with that said,
And
if that goes south, you are clear to say, hey, you know what? This dude ain't ready, and he may not ever be ready, but right now, he's not a good fit for me and where I'm going in my life.
or
Right. If that
or
goes
he's
south,
not ready.
right?
Right. Or you could say he's not ready, and I acknowledge that, but I don't want to sever the relationship. So what I will do is I will just check on him periodically. And if he decides that he wants to sever the relationship, then I'll allow him to do that. But it really is based on where you are emotionally. But the thing that I also wanted to help her with was the feelings, because there was still during our conversation a lot of talk about the little girl that just never got that love and support and connection from her dad. And she acknowledges how it showed up in her marriage and in relationships, and some of the ways that she has had to deal with or interact with men, and I can so relate to that. um, but there still needs to be some work done with regard to the little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's some of the things that we will work on together with, and I know that sounds so cliche, and it is, it is, you know, textbook, but honestly, you have to find some place and some way to process and deal with those feelings because they linger. And even though you're reconnected with dad, you still have not had you still have not had what it is that you feel like you've lost or missed or never had, and you may never have it. And then what happens to what you've been carrying your whole life that will never go away if you don't put it away. And there's work to do with
Yes.
regard to that. So that's something that we're going to work on together, just not even just from a coaching standpoint, but also from a I can relate to that, standpoint, having had that very similar experience. So, and one of the things I suggested to her was to, as an adult, right? I'm like, you're a woman, you're a grown woman. Let's say you met the younger you. Let's say you were not you, and the younger you was somebody you met, and you had a relationship with this child, and this child express to you the pain and hurt and disappointment and abandonment and all of those hurt things that she was carrying around. As the adult, what would you say to her? I want you to write a letter to her and say those things to her. What advice would you give her? Would you comfort her? What direction would you give her? So that was her homework.
That's very powerful because it's true. That's some good homework.
Yeah.
And I also would like to add that if the father does want to have the not have the relationship, but more do the reconnection, if it is true, and he feels that way, he would have to respect their communication style. That would have to be communicated first of all, too. Like, this is how I communicate,
Yeah.
because calling every day, that might be his communication style, but that is not her communication style. And in order to have that bridge reconnected and just on the path of like, hey, let's find out to get to know each other, because now you're two different people than what it was. This is my communication style. I
Right.
probably call you once a week or maybe once a month, but I text all the time, and that texting can lead to the phone calls, because you never know where it might
Yeah.
go. But he has to accept it what it is now, because he was the one who did did the damage. He did the trauma. So
Yeah,
I mean,
he broke the relationship down between him and her. He broke the
yes,
relationship
between
down.
him and
Right.
her,
And
he broke it.
so that's one of the keys, right? Because he has to realize that it's him, but we can't force him to realize that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, if a person doesn't realize that, then
Yeah.
you barking up the wrong tree. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And but we have to understand that as people, we can't force anybody to own up to their stuff, right?
Right.
And so we gotta. That's why we have to do the pre-thinking,
Yep.
have the pre-conversation, right, and set the pre-boundaries, because this can go either way, and I
It
need to
really
know
can.
how to deal with it, if it goes left or if it goes right. And that work right there is very key to the success of the
Paramount.
conversation.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
paramount.
Yes. And that's why I
And
agree.
there's
That's
so
a good
much
boundary that she
more.
can set up. Oops, my
There's
bad.
so much
But
more to this, right? Because and we can't really go. I'm sorry, Joe. You said, but it was delayed, so I'm sorry. Were you not finish your thought? I'm sorry.
oh, no problem. It was a delay with me too. But I will say that is the boundary she needs to set, though, with when it comes to communication. I want to say having that pre-talk with herself, like what she's trying to get out of it, out of this reconnection, and knowing it could go one way or the other, but also set the boundary like, hey, this is my communication style, and if we want to build up to that phone call, this is what we're gonna have to do. Like,
And
that's why I
so
believe it has to be out there.
more there's more to it also, right? because the siblings, keep in mind, the siblings would go. So the siblings have what I guess they all collectively would consider a closer relationship with dad, simply by virtue of having spent more time with him. And now you have, and we do this a lot in families, we don't understand that we can be in the same environment and have very, very different experiences. So the siblings feel like, I mean, what's the problem? Like, what's the big deal? Like, just call him. And it's like, I don't know this dude. Y'all know this dude. I don't know this dude. Well,
Hmm.
and then there's the blame game. Well, you would have known him if you had been coming. But why did that child decide I didn't want to go? And then the one time the child decided I wanted to go, the experience was less than pleasurable. What so why would I want to come again, despite what you all are saying? And we all know there are parents who will treat some children some way and some children a different way, right? So just because I came with you all doesn't even still, if I came every time, doesn't mean that I would have the same experience as you. Maybe dad has a different affinity for, different children, right? So now you've got not only feel the feeling of having to defend yourself and how you are, like you're just you're being to the person who caused you, part of the reason that you're the way you are, but you're also now having to kind of defend that against people who have not had that same experience of that person who also called him dad. And that is so hard to navigate, right? So part of that also was me saying, you need to have a transparent conversation with your siblings and say, hey, listen, I know y'all went with dad and that was the choice that you made. And just understand that I didn't make that choice. And it's unfair for you to blame me for the breakdown and not wanting to make that choice because I was a child and the obligation was not on me, as it is not on me now. Not on me. I mean, yes, it's a two-way street. You have to have a willingness to make the relationship work, but the responsibility of whether or not we have one and whether or not we can repair some of the things that have happened is not on me. And I should have the right to have the position or take the position I am. Just because you all had a different experience, it's unfair to say, well, you didn't do what we did, so it's your fault. Absolutely not. That's not fair.
Right.
And you know what
That
I
is
also
a
Hmm.
suggest is I suggest also writing a letter to dad from the little girl and telling him what you need.
Yes.
Write it as if it is present day. You are that child and he is your dad right here, right now. Dad, I need love. Dad, I need your attention. Dad, I need your hugs. Dad, I need your protection. Whatever that is, write him a letter. Whether you give it to him or not is your business, but write it. Acknowledge what you needed from him. Because part of that is going to
that's
help you to decide what you need from him now.
yes, yes. And
So that
then
was my suggestion.
the father has some issues too, right? Apparently, just from we haven't talked to him, we don't know his experience, we don't know his upbringing or anything like that. We're just hearing
Right.
from
Right.
the daughter and how she
We don't know
feels and
his
things
story.
of that nature. Right, we don't know his story. So, um, on his behalf, and as a parent, we should be very intentional. Like, go ahead. You had something to say,
Yeah.
Tara? Go ahead.
Uh, I, I stopped myself because I felt like maybe I was jumping the gun. What I don't want to do is I don't want to. How do I say it? I really don't want to consider his perspective right now. And the reason I say that is because she wrote in with needing help with navigating, because we don't know his story, we don't know his position, we don't have the information to advocate, right? We can speculate, but what I find that does is, if somebody is saying, here's my experience and this person hurt me, and I want to know how to navigate this, if we begin to appear to defend the person who caused them pain, it's almost like we're saying, yeah, we know you're hurting, but think about what might be his reasoning. Like I feel like covered that when we talked about the effects on the dad. And so I just want to be careful to stick to making sure she's heard, seen, and she's getting the support and direction she needs.
I think that she has to have a sense of understanding of who he is as well in the process of healing and having a conversation. And so that's why I was bringing it up, because if I totally dismiss everything about him and who he is and what may have caused him to do the things that he did, I'm not going to really have a relationship, because the first sign that I get that he's dismissive, I'm running, or I'm like, no, I'm it's done.
Right.
And so if I really want to
But I
approach
wasn't
this,
suggesting.
no, that's where I was coming from. That's where I was saying. That's my frame of thought in saying, of talking about the father and what may have happened to him,
Right. So
Right.
because there
so
has
let
to
me just tell
be.
you. Let me just say this. Go ahead. Well, I just wanted to say this because you said if I just dismiss everything about, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that she should dismiss everything about him, but this is a learning process, right? I feel like she should be positioning herself to get to know him, but she should not speculate on why he did or didn't do something. That should be a conversation, and he should be revealing those things to her. So that's what I was saying. I was just saying I don't want us to say, but then we got to think about him and what he might have been going. I don't want us to really go down that road, because really I want to keep the focus on her experience and what she needs. And she can't see things from his perspective unless he's willing to reveal those things to her. And it was kind of like I was saying about like when with meeting and experiencing my dad and having the opportunity, if he had made any excuse, if his reasoning had been, well, I didn't really do that, or you know and I'm just going to be honest, it sometimes feel really care why you did what you did. You hurt me, and that's what I want you to acknowledge. I don't want you to justify your behavior. I don't want you to defend yourself. I want you to acknowledge that you hurt me, and I want you to help me move forward and release this hurt. I want you to reveal to me who you are now. Are you the same man that dismissed me then? Or have you grown? Have you evolved? Have you changed? And can I have a relationship with the person you are now? So that was just
Yeah,
Right.
basically, I didn't want us to kind of really go too far down the
that's a hard
discussion
ask
of
though.
what he may have.
That's a hard ask from some people that just
Not really
in a
when the
society
topic is
that's.
from her.
I got you. I got you.
You
But
know what I'm
I'm just
saying? Like the
saying,
topic was from
it is. It
her.
is. I understand. I understand. But it's a hard ask from somebody that's dysfunctional. You're expecting me to approach
Oh,
the conversation the way you want me to answer, and that expectation, and not. Yeah, you can have that expectation, but that may not be met. And
Right.
so if I really genuinely want to have a relationship, I have to be able to listen to what you have to say. And if I do have that hard cutoff, then that you were blessed in your
I
conversation.
can't hear.
I feel, Jatana,
Oh, it
you were
wasn't all
blessed.
peaches and cream.
And
It wasn't
I
all,
mean,
and
I'm
so the thing
saying
is it's
it.
not one conversation.
Okay,
It's not
right,
one
right,
conversation.
right.
It's
Okay.
so I guess what I'm saying, because I like based on your response, I don't think I communicated what I was trying to say correctly, because I'm not what I'm asking, I don't think should be a hard ask. I'm saying for us particularly, with how we approach the conversation with regard to her question, her experience, her navigation, right? I wanted us to stay on that topic, right? But with regard to, well, we got to think about, wait a minute, let me finish. We got to think
I'm
about what
listening.
he may have been going through. She doesn't want to hear that. She doesn't want to hear, well, just think about what your abandonment, your abandoner was going through. What she, I would think, would want to know is who he is now. And she can't really think about his experience if she doesn't know what that is. So it's his responsibility to also be vulnerable and share what his, even what his experience is, right? He can't say, well, I had a reason for why I did what I did. But she has to, it has to be ongoing dialogue. It's not one conversation. It has to be, there has to be a level of vulnerability from both parties. There has to be an authentic conversation from both parties. There has to be a level of accountability from one person, particularly in that conversation. And with regard to us addressing her issue, I wanted to stay focused on her and not necessarily even give the appearance of trying to defend him in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Maybe suggesting, yeah, you could find out who he is now, but we can't say to her, well, you got to think about what he might have been experiencing, because she
Well,
doesn't
this
have to
is
think of that.
okay. And I I feel that if she's going to have a real conversation with him,
Mhm.
she has to
No,
be open.
no, she does have to
Okay,
be open, but she
come
doesn't have
on,
to
come on. Let me.
consider what he
Can I
gonna tell
finish?
us.
I listen to you. I
I'm
listen to
having
you,
a hard time. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
and that's
So
fine.
like
You
it's a
may have a
pause.
hard. Oh, you may have a hard time. So I'm just saying I'm trying to prepare her for the conversation that
Same
she's going
here.
to have with him. And
Right.
right?
Same
And
here.
so
Hmm.
so she has to be willing to hear what he has to say if she wants a sincere dialogue. Okay?
Well,
Does she has
yeah,
to
that's the reason
accept
she
it
wrote
or does
into the
she
show.
I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's the reason she wrote into the show. No, you said she has to be open to have a conversation with him. But that's the reason that she wrote into the show. She's open to a conversation. She wants to have that conversation.
I
Right.
understand that. But what I'm saying is she has to be prepared to what he's going to say and how she's going to respond
How?
to that.
How
By
can she be
by
prepared?
by asking herself those questions that we talked about earlier, okay? And also
Okay.
Hmm.
being willing to accept what he may say from the standpoint of justification
Right.
of why he did what he did. And if
Okay.
she's just totally shut off
But
from
you
that, that's fine. You can be that way.
okay.
And let me add too, because when you made the said what you said, Antoine, about the hard
No,
ask,
I
my
don't
mind
think she
asked,
shut from that.
it
I don't
went
think that
to
that's what I was saying.
I don't know
oh,
her. I'm not saying, I'm just giving a suggestion. I'm not saying I don't know her. Go ahead,
y'all
Joe.
y'all y'all. I'm about to say y'all breaking up now. I can't hear you. No, what I was saying is that when you said it might be a hard ask from someone dysfunctional, if I'm not mistaken, I was going referencing the father because that was the abandonment was part of the dysfunction, the trauma there, and I understood where that would be a hard ask because even if she presents the boundaries like we just discussed, like this is my communication boundaries of I took it to a communication standpoint, like, hey, you want me to call every day, I'm not gonna do that, I'm gonna be able to text. That hard ass be like hard, like be like, well, I don't want to text. And like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm taking from the standpoint of that, like he could shut it down, like I don't text, I just call. And like I said, that's not her style. He could easily just say, I just don't want to do this because you're not doing my ask of you to call me and pick up the phone constantly. And that's not her style. That's what I picked up from it.
Right. She wants to have the relationship, right? And she just the steps that we're taking, like she can't prepare herself for what he's going to say because she doesn't know what he's going to say. But she can prepare if he says something that she's like, okay, yeah, this is good. I can move forward with this. Or he says something that she doesn't particularly co-sign to, or, that at worst case scenario re-injures her. She can kind of have for her and how she's going to herself move forward after that. But she can't really say, well, let me think about what he may have been going through. There's no way to really prepare for what he might say or might not say. You just don't know what the person is going to say. And sometimes it's hard for people to hear your truth when especially, and we're going to use this scenario, it may be difficult, and this is speculation, right? This is not something that I'm saying will happen, has happened. I'm just saying that sometimes it may be difficult, or it may be difficult for her dad to hear that he did not meet her needs if that has not been the testimony, if you will, of the other siblings, right? Well, they seem to be fine. What's your problem type situation. So she can kind of prepare herself
Mhm.
for what we would just blanketly call a negative response, a response that, well, with her, she can say, well, depending on what that is, then I'm prepared to pivot this way or that way. Or if it's something that she really didn't like to hear, but she's like, you know what, it's not enough for me to say I don't want to ever talk to him again, then she can just kind of decide how she may want to proceed, but also have a conversation with him, because maybe he'll be like, well, if you don't want to do this, then I don't want to do that. But that's all speculation. I just want her to kind of prepare herself without telling herself stories in her head. Well, he's probably going to do this, or he's probably going to do that, or, those kind of things. Just having a conversation, creating a safety plan for whether it goes the way you hope or the way you don't hope. You can then decide how you want to pivot. And it may be in increments, right? It may be a situation where the first seems to be going pretty good, and then somebody takes a hard left, and then what do we do? That kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know that I was able to communicate to you what I was saying about the direction of the conversation. Yes, they both have to be open to communicating, but what I was saying about I didn't want us to go down the road of even having the appearance of defending him. That's all I was saying.
Right. No, I totally
And
understand that.
even if it wasn't a him, even if it wasn't a him, if it was a her, because there is another story that we got that we will dive into, and it is the reverse. It is a mom who is the abandoner and has this expectation that she should just be able to pop in and out of her children's lives when it's their birthday or when it's a holiday, and social media calls for pictures. Like, okay, but that's another. We'll talk about that another show.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I always love that we have sometimes very similar opinions, sometimes very different opinions, and that's what makes it. That's
You
what
know,
makes it
I
good.
and I think
Everybody's got
we
their
actually were saying the
perspective.
same thing. I think we were actually saying the same thing. Just being prepared to
Could have
hear
been.
what he has to say, and how you're going to respond to that. How and making your choices, as you go. And so, but being prepared for what he's going to say is what I was trying to articulate, so
Right.
that you can know what moves you're going to make. And it may, you may say some things in your your mind as you're or talking to somebody about how you're going to handle the situations, and it may change once the conversation starts. But I think that it's very important to have a, I call it, to do the what if scenarios and how you would respond to different what if scenarios in the conversation, and would that be a healthy response, and you
Okay.
know what I'm saying, and say, okay, if it's something that is similar to this, and this is how I will handle this, and this is how I will handle this, and this is how I will maneuver it. And when you're more prepared um, for the conversation, then you'll have a better footing, because that's what I've had problems in conversations where I wasn't prepared for. And it's like, oh, that didn't go the way I wanted to. And the more I have those what ifs, I'm better prepared for the conversation and the shifts that it may take when I'm communicating, and I can formulate things, ideas, and thoughts, and communicate better what I want, because I've done some of that pre-work.
And I have to respect your method, right? The way you do things, but I also know that we, as in general, people tend to create scenarios in their head. We want to have all the answers before we even have an opportunity to understand what the question was. So I would not, me personally, I would not go that route. What I would say is, I would not try to figure out what the conversation could be like. What I would have is a baseline. If we're having a conversation, and the conversation and the dialogue goes the way that I am hoping it goes, then here's how we can proceed. Or that's great. We can continue to proceed, and we can have conversation to decide how we're going to navigate this together, right? But I would have a
Mhm.
baseline of, what if it's not what I want? What if I don't get the response what I want? I would suggest hearing in the moment and not having a canned response to what may go not the way you want or the way you hope. I would say, keep an open mind, be in that moment, have the conversation, and when there is a point where you're not seeing eye to eye, unpack that together in conversation, or and I'll use this scenario, right, to kind of clarify what I mean by that. So she says, hey, Dad, I just want to let you know that I'm glad that we're in relationship, but calling every day or calling once a week, I'm not even really a texter. I'm really an introvert. And I really hope that you can understand that this is just who I am, and it has nothing to do with you per se. I'm just this way. And he says, well, you can be that way with everybody else, but I'm your father and you need to call me at least once a week. Right. I wouldn't counsel her or coach her to say, okay, what if he says that? Then here's what I'm going to say. I would suggest that she hear it in the moment, and that not respond, right? Not react, but hear it in the moment and decide in the moment how she would navigate that. Whether it be to say, well, Dad, I understand what you want, and I definitely want to meet you halfway, but that's just not something I can do. Can we do once every 2 weeks? Leave room for it to kind of be fluid, as opposed to trying to plan it out and just have it where you can be like, well, if he does this, then I'm gonna do that. That's just my style. And I'm not saying your style is wrong. The beauty in the conversation is that she can either pick one or the other styles, or a blend of your style, my style, and how to navigate that conversation and still reach out to us anytime she feels like she's stuck or it's not really unfolding. But I'm more of a process and evaluate in the moment type person. And if I can, I'm also the person that will say, you know what, I need a moment. Can I, can we pick this conversation up later? Can I call you back? I will, if I can't really think of what I feel like I want to do, because my emotions may be all over the place. And sometimes even when you think you're going to say something that you have in your mind, yeah, they do that, it may not come out that way. because your emotions begin to take over, have a flood of emotions. So a lot, involved. And I feel like there are
Yes, it is.
multiple ways that you could go about navigating the situation that would be healthy.
Yes. Um, we're we're at our hour mark now. But yes,
Shall we
one
pass
way
that?
is uh, definitely to put a pin in it when you feel that you are not in control of the conversation, or you're not, it's
Right.
not going the way you and your emotions about to get the best of you. Put a pin in it. Also, another place
Yeah.
to put a pin in it is when the conversation is shifting into another lane that you don't want it to go in,
Oh
right?
yes, that's
Yeah.
true.
So if they start
Yeah.
talking about something that is off topic of what you want to talk about, then you say, hold up, let's hold that thought. And or if it's something more valuable than what you want to talk about, and you say, well, I'm going to pin my thought. We're going to come back and address my thought, but let's go ahead and hear what you have to say in regards to the situation or whatever it is, the conversation that you want to add. And so being flexible enough to
Yeah.
put a pin in the conversation at any given point, so that you can make sure that your communication is heard, what you have to say is heard.
And I'm glad you said that because that happens in a lot of conversations. I know that happened in a previous conversation I had. I'm on the straight road talking about my experience and everything, and then the other person tried to, as I say, veer off into the curve. I was like, oh no, no, we're not going to veer off like that. Let's hold on to that. Well, like you said, put a pin in what you want to veer off to, but we need to stay what I'm trying to express, because I see that as the person trying to detour off the subject, and I'm like, no, 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 we're not detouring. Let's
Yes,
stick with this and finish this subject up, and then what we put a pin into your detour, we can go and address that. But I think if that person at the moment has the floor to speak, that needs to be addressed and try to keep the other person from veering off, because that I think I see that as a form of avoidance.
yes. And it could be intentional or unintentional.
Yes.
Right. It could just be, I get nervous and this is a lot of pressure. And, let me bring up a lighter, you know, topic. A lighter, all of us do it. When you're in the hot seat, or, you want to smooth things over, and you're like, oh, the conversation, like we were having such a good relationship, or we were having such a good, connection, and now you want to talk about the hard stuff. Like, can't we just go back to being happy? Like, do we have to? Yes, we have to address this, and there's a way to do that. And that is really what it boils down to, is just learning how to think, stop and think is what I mean. And um saying what you need to say, but also saying what you need to say with care. There are some people who will be mean and cruel and use it as an opportunity to get their lick back. You left me, so I'm about to make your life miserable, that kind of thing. And that doesn't work out for anybody. So I'm just saying that you can tell your hard truths, you can be honest about what your experience is, and you can hold people accountable without being mean, vindictive, spiteful, petty. you know it's
Right.
really of how much you really want to get in a positive way from the relationship, from the conversation, and deciding how to do that. So that's my 5 cents. That's all I
All right.
got.
Awesome. Awesome.
But
Well, I
I'm so
believe that we
excited
had,
about next week.
yes, I believe we had a great conversation tonight.
Oh yes.
Definitely.
And I would love to hear some feedback from her once she watches the episode, and then we just take it
Yeah.
from there. We continue to help people, cipher through the things, assist people in ciphering through their life situations, so that they can bring help and healing to their lives.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Love it.
So again, I'm Jay, the Healchemist with HEALn.help. We'll see you here again next week. Visit the website. It's HEALn.help. That is the website. Follow us on Instagram at HEALn_help. And I'm sorry, every social media platform would not let us use that dot. So I had to make some modifications. And check us out on YouTube where you'll see these episodes posted.
All right, and I'm Just Antoine with Drulix, and we are excited to once again ask you to like, subscribe, share, um, ring the bell so that you can get notifications when we post something new. And so we're signing off for now. Peace.
All right. Y'all take it easy and please like, subscribe, leave comments. And I'm your co-host again, Joe the Road, aka Joe with Healing Help. And yeah, follow us on Instagram and support us on Ko-Fi. You'll find that on Instagram as well. Check it out. We have some great resources there.
Awesome.